Number 7. Joe Brown. The star of the hit reality court show, Judge Joe Brown, was arrested on March the 24th of 2014 and charged with 5 counts of contempt of court. In addition to regularly appearing on television during his series' run of 15 seasons, Brown formerly served as a criminal court judge in Shelby County, Tennessee. As a favor to an acquaintance, Brown had agreed to review a child support case being presided over by Magistrate Harold Horn. According to Horn's account of the incident, Brown grew increasingly hostile towards the magistrate after he refused to discuss ancillary details of the case that were not written in the schedule. Brown repeatedly shouted at Horn and challenged his judicial authority. The outburst resulted in the former TV judge being sentenced to 5 days in jail at the Shelby County Corrections Facility in Memphis. Brown's behavior proved detrimental on a grander scale, as his arrest occurred during his campaign for the county's district attorney position. He went on to lose the general election to the Republican incumbent, earning just 35% of the vote. Number 6. Jessica O'Brien. Jessica O'Brien stepped down from her position on the Circuit Court of Cook County, Illinois, after it emerged that she'd committed mortgage fraud during her career as a realtor. O'Brien had owned and operated a real estate company for a number of years prior to her judicial election. In November of 2012, the 51-year-old had risen to prominence as the first Filipina judge elected in Cook County's history. Her husband, Brendan, was a fellow circuit judge, and the couple were well respected within their community. According to O'Brien's 2017 indictment, the judge and her former business partner, Maria Bartko, had exaggerated their company's sales numbers in an effort to fraudulently obtain mortgages on 2 properties in the city of Chicago in 2004 and 2006. The inflated figures that O'Brien put on her mortgage applications ultimately defrauded her lenders of $1.4 million. She was brought to trial on bank and mortgage fraud charges and convicted of her crimes in February of 2018. O'Brien appeared remorseful during her court proceedings, tearfully shouting, "I'm an embarrassment," at one point in the trial. Despite her apparent contrition and her cries for leniency from the federal judge in charge of her case, she was ultimately sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison. In the wake of her conviction, O'Brien formally resigned from the court. Number 5. Cynthia G. Imperato. Cynthia G. Imperato of Florida's 17th Circuit Court was arrested and charged with driving under the influence on November the 5th of 2013. On the night of her arrest, the call was made to 911, reporting an erratic driver who'd almost crashed their white Mercedes-Benz into multiple vehicles on the roadway. An hour later, a Broward County police officer initiated a traffic stop with Imperato, who was driving a vehicle that matched the 911 caller's description. The officer had spotted Imperato as she swerved and came perilously close to hitting a parked car, and thus pulled her over. The circuit judge initially refused to follow the policeman's request for her to exit the vehicle, claiming she was going to call her attorney. She was unable to dial the numbers on her cell phone, however, and she then begrudgingly agreed to step out onto the sidewalk. The officer noted that Imperato was visibly unstable as she made strenuous attempts to get out of the car, having to use the door to prop herself up. Imperato refused to take a breathalyzer test, causing her driver's license to be suspended automatically. She pleaded not guilty to DUI charges in December of 2013, but was ultimately sentenced to 20 days of house arrest and a year of probation. The judge stopped presiding over criminal cases following her conviction, and in 2015, the Florida Judicial Qualifications Committee recommended she be given a 90-day suspension, as well as a $20,000 fine as a result of her DUI. While awaiting a final ruling by the Florida Supreme Court, Imperato made the decision to resign in February of 2016. Number 4. Diane VETTORI-CARABALLO. A former Mahoning County Court judge was convicted of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from one of her deceased clients in June of 2019. 50-year-old Diane VETTORI-CARABALLO of Youngstown, Ohio, was first elected as a Sebring Court judge in 2002 and was subsequently re-elected to the position in 2006 and 2012. In addition to her judicial responsibilities, Caraballo also operated a private law practice. One of her clients was Robert Sampson, whose will she'd drafted prior to his death in 2015. She then submitted an application to administer Sampson's estate, falsely claiming that he'd passed away without leaving a will. The court instead handed administrative duties over to Sampson's sister, Dolores Falgiani. Caraballo prepared Falgiani's will on November 3rd of 2015. Most of her estate was left to various friends and family members, while the rest of it was given to 2 animal charity organizations in the area. Falgiani ultimately passed away in March of 2016, at which point Caraballo filed an application to probate her deceased client's will. While reviewing Falgiani's estate, the judge reported the discovery of $20,000 in cash in the woman's home, which was then purportedly deposited into her estate. During the next 2 years, Caraballo filed reports of newly discovered assets on a number of occasions. With each report, the judge secretly siphoned varying amounts of money from her late client's fortune. In total, Caraballo stole $328,000 from Falgiani's estate, the full amount of which she was ordered to pay in restitution upon her conviction. She was also sentenced to 30 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release. Number 3. Timothy Nolan. In 2018, a district judge from Campbell County, Kentucky, was found guilty on human trafficking charges and other related felonies. Timothy Nolan, aged 71, held his judicial office for nearly 3 decades, during the course of which he'd become well known for his strict sentences and hardened courtroom demeanor. He was also a staunch political activist, having worked closely with Donald Trump's presidential campaign in 2016. The former judge became the focus of an investigation which revealed that he targeted a total of 19 young women over a period of many years, forcing them to perform intimate acts against their will. Nolan reportedly made his victims take sedatives so as to prevent them from resisting his advances. As per his predatory modus operandi, he would threaten to arrest them or evict them from their homes if they contacted law enforcement or refused to perform the acts he demanded. Nolan ultimately pleaded guilty to the 21 various charges levied against him in court. Although he attempted to prolong his trial by firing his attorney and threatening to withdraw his guilty plea, Nolan was eventually sentenced to the maximum prison term of 20 years and was also ordered to pay a fine of $100,000. Number 2. Lynn Rosenthal. Florida Judge Lynn Rosenthal was taken into custody by police after she collided with a concrete median and struck a patrol car on the way to work. Rosenthal approached the judge's parking lot at the Broward County Courthouse shortly before 9 a.m. on May the 27th of 2014. A deputy present at the scene witnessed the sitting judge driving erratically as she sideswiped a parked police car with her BMW. She kept driving, eventually crashing into the security gate near the entrance to the parking lot. She reversed her vehicle and hit the gate several more times. The deputy stopped her and requested she exit the car. Rosenthal was noticeably unsteady and struggled to step out onto the pavement. Her speech was slurred and she freely volunteered the information that she'd been involved in another crash earlier that morning. Rosenthal said that a truck had tried to run her off the road, causing her to collide with a median on the interstate. She claimed to have recorded the incident with her cell phone camera. Officers reviewed the footage Rosenthal had captured, only to discover that the judge had crashed into the divider due to her own inability to stay in a single lane and not because of any other vehicle. Although there was no alcohol found in Rosenthal's system, she did admit to taking an Ambien pill the night before her arrest. She was charged with a DUI and eventually resigned from the 17th Circuit Court in October of 2015. She was the third Broward County judge found guilty of driving under the influence within a 6-month period after the convictions of Cynthia Imperato and Giselle Pollock. Number 1. John A. Westhafer. On March the 4th of 1996, an innocent woman was wrongly convicted of murder and arson. She was sentenced to 60 years in prison by Circuit Judge John A. Westhafer of Decatur County, Indiana. Christine Bunch, who was 22 years old and pregnant at the time of her conviction, had survived a house fire which had engulfed her living trailer and taken the life of her son, Anthony. An investigation into the origins of the blaze was subsequently conducted by a state arson analyst named Brian Frank. He determined that the fire had been started at 2 separate locations within the mobile home, and that a liquid accelerant such as kerosene or lighter fluid had helped spread the flames throughout the rest of the residence. Based on Frank's findings, which were corroborated by a federal forensic investigator, Bunch was arrested for igniting the deadly fire. At Bunch's 1996 trial, Judge Westhafer baselessly accused the woman of getting herself impregnated in order to avoid serious punishment. He insisted that she would not be the one to raise the child she was carrying before handing down the maximum prison sentence of 60 years. Bunch served more than 17 years behind bars before she was eventually exonerated of the crime. Investigators ascertained that the kerosene present in the home at the time of the fire could have been attributed to the kerosene-powered heater in the living room. As a result of this discovery, it was determined that the accelerant was not poured on the floor by Bunch, as the prosecution had previously argued in court. Westhaffer retired in January of 2012, just a few months prior to Bunch's release from prison. Thanks for watching. Would you rather appear before an intoxicated judge or let your kid's sibling parent you for a week? Let us know in the comments section below.